All right, greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis. And it is August 31st, 2022, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another version of a CARMA Quick Chat, in which we take the opportunity to get caught up with people who are contributing to CARMA. And today it's my pleasure to chat with Dr. Tine Koehler from the University of Melbourne. And Tine is joining us in anticipation of her webcast in a little over 2 weeks on September the 16th, in which she will be talking about qualitative templates and qualitative research. And Tine is a regular contributor to CARMA, and it's always good to spend time with her, and especially today to have the chance to catch up with her. So Tine, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to hang with us.
Good to see you, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Yep. So, Tine, we live kind of in a world for which, and when it comes to the methods that researchers use, people tend to fall into one of two camps. Either they use and have experience with quantitative methods, or they take more of a qualitative approach in their research. You are somebody who is very accomplished on both sides. And as I was reflecting on this, I wondered whether you think that there are ways in which being strong on both sides helps each other. Are there ways in which being strong in your quantitative tools impacts how you view things qualitatively when you take that approach, and vice versa? So what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely benefited me. So maybe a bit of background kind of to get into that topic in particular. So I was trained very strongly in quantitative first.
Oh, yeah.
And then basically discovered qualitative research being a research assistant for a professor in the management school. And that professor was doing this kind of international project where she was using a grounded theory approach and did ethnographic interviewing. So it was very different from what I knew. I did a lot of training with her, and it was super exciting. So I fell in love with that method and then decided to do this for my dissertation work. But I think when it really kind of started hitting me in terms of, how different qualitative methods really are, was when I got my first job here at Melbourne. And so many of my colleagues were in different epistemological traditions. In none of my programs, not the one in Germany or the one in the US that I was trained in, we'd never talked about that. It was as if these different epistemologies never existed. And so that was a big eye-opener, the fact that people did research from very different worldviews and used a lot of different qualitative techniques I'd never heard about. So in a way, that opened up a whole lot of questions, but also a whole lot of opportunity for further training. And I think at that point, the qualitative really started influencing the quantitative for me, because all of a sudden I started questioning some of the assumptions that most of our quantitative methods are being based on. And so in that sense, I think that's enriched my thinking, especially when I think about things like replication or meta-analysis. So like thinking about the larger purposes that are underlying the methods. So why are we doing this, and are those purposes kind of conducive to what we try to get out of it? And so that was, I think, for me, really kind of an eye-opener, changing my thinking and writing in quantitative methods as well. And then, of course, the quantitative side remains strong. So, there's still a kind of, I think I invariably switch between what I call my dark side. So it depends on who I talk to, but the quantitative side is still strong in me. And so every once in a while, I think it helps a lot to think about research design and qualitative methods. So a lot of kind of experimental design thinking goes into some of my projects where it fits, not where it doesn't fit. But there are always things that kind of influence how I think about what I can do in qualitative research that is very much affected by my quantitative side. But I'm not a big fan. So, I mean, I think the kind of dual thinking has to go to a point where I take it take each at its value. So I'm not trying to put quantitative standards onto qualitative or vice versa. But I do like thinking about, what are the underlying assumptions of these respective methods? What are the frameworks in which they're built, in which they function, and also what are the limitations of those frameworks? So I think that's kind of valuable to have.
Yeah.
Sometimes not so easy to translate one to the other because they are kind of built on different assumptions, but it helps kind of being able to speak to both camps and understand at least what their issues are with the respective other method, and then hopefully finding a language to translate one to the other.
Yeah. Well, I think, in the 30 years or so that I've been involved in the community, one of the big positive developments has been an increased respect and understanding and acceptance of the diversity in methods. And so I think having somebody that takes your particular approach to, as you say, can speak to both sides is something that's very valuable. One of the other things that you've been working on that I know about, but that people watching this may not know, relates to your work with, I think, as a co-founder of Women in Research Methods. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to help create awareness. So what's been going on with the Women in Research Methods?
Yep. So Lisa Lambert and I founded the Women in Research Methods to create a space in particular where women can find some mentorship, find spaces where they feel potentially safe to discuss research methods topics and their ambitions as research methodologists. We felt that over the years that we met quite a few women who had an interest in research methods, but didn't quite know how to get started, might not have had mentors in their respective institutions that could help them get started, and often potentially felt a bit intimidated by the kind of existing spaces. So we heard a lot, for example, RMNet, for example, is a wonderful resource for very specific questions, and it's used widely by so many. But it's also the discussions that happen there often happen at a very high level, and they're happening, of course, between the experts in the field, which is one of its strengths. But I think for a lot of the people that we talked to, it was an intimidating space to start asking their questions because they felt they're just not at that level yet, and so they felt there wasn't anything else where they could do that. So with the Women in Research Methods, we wanted to create spaces like that. So we have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group, and we have discussions in these respective groups about topics of interest. So when people look for literature or they want to ask questions about a specific design that they want to do, they ask basically for feedback. We also support women who want to become research methodologists through a lot of sessions. We call them launchpad sessions. And so we discuss how to become a research methodologist, what's involved in that. And so far, most of our sessions like that have been affiliated with the CARMA Research Methods shorts courses. So usually, depending on which time zone they're held in, we add on one of the launchpad sessions, which is open to everybody. So one doesn't have to have been enrolled in a CARMA short course for that period to attend one of the launchpads, but those have been very important. And so we invite experts, research methodologists, to talk about how they've become a research methodologist, what they're currently thinking about, how they write papers. And that, I guess, is one of our other things that we constantly try to help people think about. Well, how do you turn a research methods innovation that you're currently thinking about or that you're currently using into a paper? But we also talk about things like, how do you support a tenure case? So when you are interested in research method and publishing in that space, what do you actually write in your tenure case to make the case that that's an important contribution to scholarship? So the support's pretty wide. We had our first meeting at AOM in person this time around to network with some of the women members of the group. So that was fantastic, seeing some of them.
Yeah.
And also listening in, what would be helpful for them. So we're working on a couple of things in the background now, hopefully increasing a little bit of the utility as well in terms of what we can provide in mentorship and support when people want to learn some new methods.
And so where can women who are interested in joining, can you give them clarify what they should do?
Well, first and foremost, on the CARMA website, there is actually a Women in Research Methods affiliate website, so they can go there and they can get a whole lot of information about us. They can also find links to our respective Facebook and LinkedIn groups if they want to become members through that. That's where we mostly post what's going on. There are also spotlights about female research methodologists on that website, so that they can get a bit of a feel of who we are. So I think that would be your first stop, and then connect with us through our respective social media, and then become part of an event in the future.
Yeah. Well, it's a great contribution, and we see ourselves as being honored and privileged to support the cause in the way that we do with the partnership with our events. One of the other things that I know you're very excited about is your new role as co-editor-in-chief of Organizational Research Methods. We had our editorial board meeting at the Academy of Management meeting in Seattle. So it's a big responsibility. What is it that excites you the most, or that you're most looking forward to with this position that you have?
Yep. Yeah, it is exciting to be one of the co-editors. So again, working with Lisa Lambert here, I think we're kind of a twofer by now at this point. So we come in a package. But for me, the excitement is about really creating different fora for new and necessary debates and research methods. So it's providing space for important voices in the field, communicating about methods, so either new methods or maybe challenging existing methods. It's all about improving our practice, really. So for me, when I talk about research methods, so for me, research methods are a negotiated practice that is enacted by researchers. So for me, there isn't really the one best way to do something in most cases. There isn't necessarily the one right way to do things. In general, kind of most methods come with their benefits and with their weaknesses. So most methods can do something uniquely well, but with that, you buy yourself some limitations somewhere else. So for me, it's important to keep the conversation current and relevant and lively around those advantages and disadvantages, around creating new methods or improving the ones that we're using. And so to some degree, it's important to create awareness and to create spaces where we can have those discussions. And ORM is, of course, the #1 journal to do that. The other thing that I'm really excited about is to widen methodological plurality. So in a way, there are so many different methods out there. As I said, not one is the right one most of the time, but there are a couple of methods that are used very frequently, and some others are maybe not used as much, or they're used in other disciplines and we don't know about them. So for me, it's also interesting to find these other methods, find out about methodological innovations that people are using in the field that could benefit other people in the field in terms of how they are using certain methods or how they approach data collection analysis. So it's also making a space for these alternative or underused methods that we currently just don't see. So that's the other exciting part. And then really the third one is to find new research methods voices. So identifying researchers, like with the Women in Research Methods network, find researchers who have a genuine interest in research methods, who are doing interesting things. And we sometimes see these interesting things in their substantive papers that they publish in other journals, but they only kind of hint there at what they've done because they don't have the space to describe everything about their method. And I kind of love convincing those researchers to write up their work for ORM or for a research methods journal, helping them figure out how to do this, and creating that voice that they have for that practice that we're engaged in. So, you know, we've had now multiple sessions at different conferences. We do that sometimes for the launch pads as well, where we talk about the differences between writing a methods paper and writing kind of a normal substantive paper that most people, I think, know about. And so there are, you know, differences and there are similarities, but it's important to know how to write a methods paper well. So we do a lot of work, outreach work with respective authors to help them conceptualize methods papers and potentially also to consult with us on ideas that they currently have. So that's my kind of, I guess, final point that I'm super excited about.
Yeah. Well, I had the great pleasure last weekend of being with Paul Lisi and Bob Vandenberg, and the three of us, former editors, were talking about the excitement that we felt about ORM being in yours and Lisa's hands as we go to move forward. So,
Right.
as I mentioned at the beginning, we're here primarily because of your upcoming CARMA webcast. That's on September 16th. And that webcast is available to those who are institutional members of CARMA. It's at noon Eastern time. So you want to give folks a preview of what you're going to be talking about?
Sure. So I think that's going to be something like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. my time.
Yeah.
So I hope at some point, we'll hope I'll do well and at least stay awake for it. But no, it should be more exciting than that. So what I want to talk about is essentially qualitative data analysis beyond templates. And so the title here also reflecting that I want to introduce different analytic approaches that make our data analysis adaptable and relevant. And so this kind of feeds into, or feeds, I guess, comes out of a feature topic that I guest edited with Ann Smith at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and Vikram Baku at the University of Melbourne. And that feature topic of organizational research methods is on templates and qualitative research. And we originally generated that feature topic because we've talked to a lot of qualitative research experts in the field, and we all kind of perceived some increasing trends for people using certain methods in a template type of form. So using them in a very generalized, very standardized form that often didn't really suit the research they were doing. And so when we talk about templates, we define them as systematic, simplified, and repeatable approaches to data collection, analysis, interpretation. And these are kind of standardized and they're legitimized through the system. So through, for example, the fact that journal editors reinforce them or reviewers reinforce them, or some of our co-authors reinforce them. And so that can mean that somebody, well-meaning in a PhD seminar says, here's a paper by this author, that is the standard method to do X approach, grounded theory, case analysis, whatever we have, use that. Not ever asking about what the data collection is actually about, what its purpose is, but use that, it will always fit. And that's, of course, not really the case. It doesn't always fit. Where it fits, it's great, but we see so many cases now where that kind of approach actually doesn't suit the study, and then, of course, people end up with kind of findings and interpretations that aren't super exciting, because they stayed very much at the surface of what they could have done. So kind of out of this featured topic and out of that that purpose for us, I want to kind of integrate some of the papers in the featured topic that all have provided an empirical or conceptual examination of what the problem is with template use, what we're seeing, and also alternatives to it. And so what I'll do in the webcast is that I first introduce kind of the templates themselves. So what the issue is around template use, what we're seeing as trends in the field. And then I will basically integrate some of the papers in the featured topic to showcase how you could do it differently. So what are some of the alternatives to template use when you're doing your own studies? I'll probably introduce one or two concrete examples of studies that I've done where I showcase some of those approaches, so showcase some of those techniques that you could use as alternatives. And hopefully that will help people also figure out how they'd use some of those techniques, some of the suggested techniques, but also see what the alternatives are and how they can use them in their own work. So it's really about maybe giving people some inspiration to consider other approaches to qualitative analysis, but also maybe move away from some of the template approaches that they've been using so far to just, do a bit more justice to the data that they have or the situation that they're trying to do research in. So hopefully, that'll be helpful for people. And I may slip in, like kind of 5 or 10 minutes there to talk about, well, if you are adapting your qualitative method, this may be an ORM paper. This may be an innovation that you may need to write up for us. And so I may slip in a little bit in a sneaky way, like how to write papers for ORM at the end, or for another methods journal if we get to it. But hopefully that would also be helpful for people to see how you would basically translate a methodological innovation into a publication.
Well, you can slip in that and anything else that you'd like, and it's certainly something we'll be looking forward to. A little over 2 weeks from today, that's Friday, September the 16th at noon Eastern time. You mentioned being up late to do the webcast. You also got up early today to do the chat, so we're appreciative of that. Tina, I can remember meeting you as a grad student. And it's just been a real treat to watch you grow with your career and have the success that you've had. So the field is already much better because of the things that you've done, and that will only increase. So we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and stay safe until then. Tina Koehler, thank you.
Thanks, Larry.